Howdy, all. It's our last show of 2017.
Hey!
We will not be here on New Year's Day, obviously. Russ will be at the Winter Classic at Citi Field, where a losing baseball team plays. And we won't be here on the 2nd because Russ will be making his way to Champion City, Buffalo. Yeah. And I will be probably either covering the World Junior or covering the Leafs Tampa game. So I'm not sure right now.
By Champion City, you're talking about the Bandits, right?
Yeah, exactly. The Buffalo Bills of the AFL. That's what I'm talking about. I have to say, and Anthony, you're not exposed to this because you actually work a real job, 9 to 5 or 8 to 5 or whatever the heck it is for a teacher, 6 to 5. But if you watch any of these morning shows on television, I swear they're brain cell killers. Anybody who watches Megyn Kelly or Kathy Lee and Hoda or Kelly and Ryan Seacrest, of course, it was in the background today as I was writing my story, and I'm like, how can anybody watch this and not want to do an Elvis on the TV with a baseball bat?
That's one of the advantages. You're right. There's a bit of an advantage there with me being at work in my job, so I don't have to regularly expose myself to it. But there's times when I'm off, if I got to bring the car. The place I tend to see these shows will be if I got to bring the car in for service, and I'm waiting. It's not going to be that long, so I'm stuck 30 minutes to an hour, and I'm watching it, and I'm going. You can literally feel the brain cells leaking out of your ear. Yeah, it's going down. It's like it's almost like a drug. It's like you're being put on some kind of a drug watching it. In many ways, it's like
it should be like scanners. Like if you get to a point,
it's not even. I don't even want to call it opium in this case because opium, potentially in this case,
fentanyl.
It's not something that's expanding your mind. It's causing it to turn into mush, and it's. I don't know how. I don't want to say this in a way that would seem insulting to the older generation, but it seems like it's geared in towards a very sort of 80s-esque, just disposable information, cotton candy information that I really, I'm kind of glad that I the job that I have that I'm not stuck watching it in the morning.
Now that you say that, I
don't want to be insulting to like my parents' generation or anybody who's older than me. It's just if you're retired, they're at that retirement age now, and they're like, they may flick it on, and it's like it is background noise, as Mike.
Well, yeah. Here's my take. I don't watch any of it. Never have. I just never enjoyed it. But like my thing is I saw when I was at the diner, they did have I saw Ryan Seacrest on, and I was having a conversation saying. Like, why do I even care who's on for New Year's Eve anymore? When I was a little kid, Dick Clark was a great thing. I get it. When Dick Clark passed away, I no longer cared about who was on New Year's Eve, and I probably didn't care for the last 15 years of Dick Clark to be real. Mm-hmm. My parents cared about Guy Lombardo, if anybody remembers that guy.
Oh yeah.
But the idea is, does anybody even care about those shows? It's all taped. Nobody's playing live unless somebody plays live on top of the Empire State Building. I'm not tuning in.
Well, the performers I never cared about, but there was something. But in recent years, and I didn't watch them, but everybody seemed to be like all aflutter about Anderson Cooper and Kathy Griffin, and obviously that's dead because Kathy Griffin killed her career with a stupid joke. But. Yeah, no, I mean, honestly, I flip on like the news station just to see, okay, it's 12 o'clock. Actually, what I'm going to do this year, and this is the ultimate nerdiness, but I'm going to do it. I follow musical performers on Twitter, and one of them that I do follow is Phil Collins, who's one of my favorite drummers of all time. And he said a few weeks ago, if you start the song In the Air Tonight at 11:56 and 40 seconds, at 12 midnight, you get the drum intro. Yeah. So I'm gonna do that because if I'm not out, I'm gonna do that because that'll be pretty cool.
Everybody's taken the idea and have now extrapolated it because you take a good idea, as we all do in society, and then eat it to a bloody pulp. And now I've seen
marketing. All this is some guy who's running PhilCollins.com. Phil Collins doesn't even care other than what old CD can he repurpose and sell you today. And you know that, Mike. And now they got you for this. I can't.
Yeah, they got
Phil Collins Wars on Hockey Buzz.
Hey, Hook man.
They totally hooked you in.
All I know is, and then we'll start the show. The most disturbing thing is when they reissued all of Phil Collins' albums. The worst idea that they did was to take the covers of Face Value, of Hello, I Must Be Going.
And do them today.
no, of all the albums, and they took current pictures of Phil.
Right. It was a bad idea.
It was a horrible. He looks like an old cringe. It's like,
yeah, it's not a smart idea. Whoever thought of that, I agree, it's a bad idea. Now, I don't know if you guys, last thing is we should say if we're doing New Year's resolutions. I will tell you, I am not a New Year's resolution guy. I have never believed in them. Why all of a sudden do I wait until it's the next year to say, I'm going to do this better, I'm going to do that better. I should do better all the time, shouldn't I? Yeah. Like, that's my take on it.
Well, the thing that pisses me off about New Year's resolutions is, like, I go to the gym and it becomes a pain in the ass the first week and a half of January.
Right, because everybody's all gung-ho.
Right. When all these idiots are there taking up all the exercise.
Like to use Mike is not available because some guys come in. I know, when I was regularly going to the gym, that was, this year.
So, I mean, stay at home for those 10 days when you try to convince yourself that you're going to drop 75 pounds, which you're not going to. Just go to McDonald's and eat a Big Mac. Forget it. All right, here we go. On that pleasant,
great advice, Mike,
and optimistic note. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Friday, December 29th, 2017.
I'm Anthony Mangione from Center Ice Philly Magazine.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology and also Center Ice Philly Magazine.
And I'm Michael Agello, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast, and I feel short here because I don't have anything else other than Hockey Buzz.
But look at all those diplomas you have behind you, Mike. You've got that.
That I am incredibly smart. Some of them are my dad's, but not all of them. Some of them are mine.
You can't
and this is the
Yes, Dr. Agello. Please continue.
This is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Okay. Let's start with the World Junior. I wanted to start with this again. We touched on it yesterday, but it got more momentum again yesterday with the attendance at the U.S.-Slovakia game. And I really think this is sort of a bit of a red herring because, as I've said, and I think this is the case, I mean, Buffalo's taking a hit right now because the crowds for the two Canada games, the Canada-Slovakia game was not well attended. It was less well attended than Canada's first game against Finland. The U.S.-Slovakia game was not as well as attended as the first U.S. game against Denmark. And Anthony, you first. I think this is those games are being victimized by the outdoor game today because they're expecting 40,000 people, and I think people want to go to the showcase event and not a blasé preliminary game.
I think it's that, I think even if this was an indoor game too, I think U.S. Canada would still be the one that everybody's going to go to.
Right.
But add income at this point of the year, the amount of money that people spent for the holidays and things of that sort, and how much money they spend on Bills games that they're up in Buffalo.
Yeah.
And games during the year, there's only so much disposable income to go around for multiple games. And again, they're going to go to the games that, again, they know they're going to know something potentially about the Canadian players, and the Canadian fans that were coming down obviously know plenty about the American players. It's tough sometimes to get the blood flowing for a preliminary game again, not preliminary game, but a turning pre-round robin game against Slovakia. It's just were those players on that team that you can lock in on in this circumstance. It's tough. And I do think it is hyping up things a little bit too much in terms of that. But I think, again, it does go back to fans' income in this circumstance and what they're going to be willing to drop money down for. And it is a showcase event. And that's what people are going to want to lay out their hard-earned money for, as cold as it may be out there at New Era Field.
Well, I think it's a combination. I think it's the dollar. And I also think it's when Canadian fans are coming over the bridge, they're working. They're not coming midweek. They didn't go midweek in 2011. So I don't know what they were expecting. They're going to go to their games, and Buffalonians as a whole are not going to Canadian games. They're going to go to the U.S. games, but if they're going to the outdoor game, which seats 40,000, yeah, what's left to spend on? I mean, I definitely think that's an issue.
Well, I mean, factor this in. Supposedly it's going to be 40,000 people at the game today. That's double the size of KeyBank Center. So you're talking about the capacity of 2 games.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say last night for Slovakia and US, it was about 3,000 to 3,500 just by And I mean, I think that I don't know what the crowds were for the preliminary games in Toronto or in Helsinki or in Montreal 3 years ago. But I would seriously doubt that there is more, that there was significantly more than these games. Now, I talked to a reporter. I talked to Chris Peters, who we had on the Off the Post show that just became available. Yes,
We'll leave that there.
We'll leave that there. And he said that the crowds there compared to 2011 were significantly less. Now that's a concern for Buffalo, but I think again there was no outdoor game in 2011.
Right, and the outdoor game is 40,000 seats. It will not only set a record, it will break a record, and I'd be shocked if they do another outdoor game because I'm worried about it. Like the U.S. lost Logan Brown already, right? Yeah. Now there's players that are slightly banged up. Like on Canada, there's Clegg and Fabro, and they're slightly banged up.
Yeah,
I keep bringing back, and Anthony remembers this in 2012. Yeah. Jaromir Jagr played one shift, got hit into the boards, and he never played the rest of the Winter Classic. If that happens in a tournament to some top player of either U.S. or Canada, that could really change the entire tide of the tournament for that team.
Well, let's start with the U.S. played, and I thought this was going to be a problem because of fatigue, but not because of what the actual outcome of the game ended up being. But the U.S. playing a game at 8 p.m. the day before the outdoor game, I thought was incredibly bad scheduling. It just bad. And I understand, like, you want the U.S. as the main game to draw the most fans, but honestly, I think even though it was a Thursday, put it at 4 o'clock. You probably get just as many.
You had to be fair to the team there.
Right. Now, the thing is, Slovakia played 8 p.m. or 7 p.m. the previous day, so they would have been in the same situation. But anyway, so Slovakia, the U.S. were supposed to beat Slovakia. That they were the much better team. The U.S. did not show up. Their head coach Bob Motzko basically after the game said, we showed spurts, but we never put it all together. And they lost 3-2. And it was one of those games where I thought the U.S. was absent in the first period. They started to come around. Slovakia gets the first goal. The U.S. come back. Slovakia takes the lead again. Casey Middlestat makes a great play to tie the game. And then Samuel Buchik, I think is how they pronounce it. He scores with a couple minutes left in regulation, and there you go. Now Slovakia. I mean, Russ, again, I thought this was a bad idea scheduling wise, but now the U.S. go into this game, and maybe it was the fact that they were overlooking this game in anticipation of the game against Canada.
Yeah, I mean, look, they're kids, right? The outdoor game, many of them are playing for the first time. We saw all the pictures on social media. There's all the ticket requests. There's a lot of things that go into these outdoor games that cause distractions. We know that. And NHLers can handle it better than the kids can for sure. So I think that was a part of it. But I also think a part of it, Bob Motzko needs to take a little on his shoulders too, because when Logan Brown got hurt, he didn't stop juggling lines for that entire game. And I wrote about some of the combinations that I liked, but he kept throwing out different combinations because things weren't working. And I think that kept them unsettled for a good part of the game. Now, I think the first period they got over the overlooking part. I think you're right about that. But I think that bad start gave Slovakia a lot of reason to want to stay in that game. And the shot blocking was massive. I don't know. Again, Motzko said post-game that he was, that Slovakia stuck to their game plan. Well, if you knew what the game plan was, why didn't more players do what Middlestat did and try and go around the shot blockers and do it on your own? They've got enough players, Quinn Hughes, they got enough guys that could rush the puck up and do that. They didn't do that enough. They let them block shot after shot after shot. That was a big mistake.
Yeah. Anthony, what did you think of the game?
I mean, for me, especially going into this game, and we talked about this, Russ hit it too, but I mean, you and I talked about this pre-show as well with regards to this is a lot for kids. I mean, we talk about NHLers being some distractions, but they're able to handle it at this point now. This is a first time for junior hockey for this situation to occur.
Mm-hmm.
And for the U.S. now, they are really – it's kind of a backs, you know, they're going to get their backs against the wall here again in this game. It's a tough spot. I think they've got, you know, a good, you know, it could also potentially be a rallying point for them, but the quick turnaround, as you said, after an 8 p.m. game the night before is a lot. So, yeah, the U.S. definitely has to make some adjustments in tactics, as Russ said. Losing Logan Brown, again, they got to get things settled down. And you're right, Russ. Again, the coaching and watching the remainder of that game, yeah, they were kind of sticking to their own system, and not, you know, if you've got some individual talents here in this case, I know you don't want to necessarily break away from systems per se, but if you know what they're going to do, then you want to bust that. You have to, and then it comes down to that. We've seen teams do that. They do it in the NHL as well. If your team's dropping back, then there's times you just got to let your guys' talent come through and and start playing instinctually.
Yeah, and an interesting choice. I mean, the assumption was after the first game, and you know, I'm focused on the U.S. goaltending with Joseph Woll being a Leaf prospect. Woll played pretty good, although it didn't face a ton of shots in their first game against Denmark, and Denmark is probably the worst team in the tournament. And he played again last night. And Motzko said after the game, you know, it wasn't his fault. You know, the two goals, the second goal and the third goal were just defensive breakdowns, and there was no way that he was going to stop them. The first goal was problematic, and he regretted it. But that means probably they're starting Ottinger in the big game against Canada, which is, Russ, if you remember, they played Woll, who was the number 2 last year, against Canada. That just seems to be the way they go. I don't know if they have a lot of confidence in the depth of their goaltending, or they're basically just saying, okay, well, we think we can beat Canada even with our backup.
No, I think they have confidence in it. I think the difference in this one is, and I would prefer to use Ottinger in the outside, is he covers a little more net faster than Woll does. Woll's like a really good situational guy, but if you get him scrambling a little bit, he's not going to make that stellar, amazing save. He'll stop that point-blank shot like he did last night, which is great.
Yeah.
But Ottinger can make that stellar athletic save. And sometimes with these fluky bounces outdoors, you need a guy who could do that. So I think it's a good game for Ottinger. I don't think – right now I think they're going to stick to their game plan and keep with Woll, unless Ottinger were to have a shutout or something. Then maybe that would change it. That's the only way, though. But this game – it's funny. I just said on Kevin Allen's podcast, I made the Buffalo Bills joke. I said, I'm going to pick the U.S. in this game, but they wore Bills jerseys, and we know nobody wins in Bills jerseys. But
were they wearing those for the game?
No, they just didn't.
Oh, please. Thank God. Okay.
They just didn't practice. But the big thing in this game is Canada does have the better defensive core than the U.S., and the U.S. may have faster skaters, but things are going to slow down in this game, I think, pretty quick. And so that's going to favor Canada because they've got a great forecheck. And the U.S. has guys that can do that, right? Like Riley Tufte. They got plenty of big bodies that can do it. Even Middlestat can work that game if he has to. Not a problem. Yamamoto dealt with it in the NHL. It's not a problem. But the thing is, if that's Canada's game plan, the U.S. has really got to be ready for that. And then it will be a tight game. And I'm a little worried now because I want to see what the line combinations are. I did like Anderson and Middlestat. I loved Paling with Tkachuk. And actually, to be honest, I think I'd make that my second line now because those guys were that good that I don't care who's returning players. I don't care about any of that right now. Yeah. I want my bigger guys who can grind it out in this outdoor game to get more ice time. And that's where a Paling with the long reach and Tkachuk with speed and long reach, little edge to him, that's where that could really come in handy.
Yeah, Tkachuk last night was a complete beast. I mean, to me, he's going to be a top 5 pick in this draft. I mean, any team that needs.
I think number 3. I can't see.
Well, I had this debate last night online because a lot, and don't get me wrong, I think Quinn Hughes is phenomenal. I think he's got a great skill set. He's incredibly quick. He's incredibly creative on the back end. I just think the concern in the NHL obviously is his size. And somebody was saying, well, Quinn Hughes is clearly the number 3 in the draft. I mean, of course, we're 6 months away from the draft, so cool your jets. But it's situational. I mean, honestly, if there's a team like Buffalo who needs a big, they're going to lose Evander Kane. They're going to trade him at the deadline. Sam Reinhart has not been as big a hit as they thought. They're probably going to need scores on the wing to help out Jack Eichel. Casey Middlestat looks like he's ready for the NHL right now,
and he's one and done. He's not going back to college.
Yeah, and he could play the wing, but he looks effective enough to go right into the NHL and play center right away.
Yeah, when he was in the top center spot, he was winning faceoffs. It's not a problem.
Right. They may move Ryan O'Reilly, but honestly, if they're picking third and Tkachuk and Hughes are on the board, I'm thinking they're taking Tkachuk, because you put Tkachuk with Eichel, that's a combo that's going to dominate for the next decade.
Yeah. I think mentality-wise too, if you watch Tkachuk play, I mean, I think Motzko said it. He's a pit bull out there. He's an absolute pit bull, and you've got two similar mindsets there for Eichel. The way he plays, he needs a guy like Tkachuk. I think he needs that guy who really just wants that play, willing to do anything it takes, forecheck-wise.
And that's the key point, Ant. When I went into the Sabres locker room the other day, it seemed like Eichel was not only more disappointed than everybody, and he probably had a couple minutes to calm down. But I did watch the Road to the Winter Classic to kind of see what I missed, because we never get in the locker room that quick. Right. And he was like, his face was red. He was mad about that Flyers game, and I don't think there's anybody on that team that plays to his level of intensity, his level for wanting to win. And that's where I think you're right. And someone like Tkachuk would do that.
That's a cultural thing for that. The problem is they've been beaten down for so darn long at this point now. It's an organizational mentality.
And not to make everything about Toronto, but honestly, side by side, the Leafs and the Sabres were going into the rebuilds at the same time. Mm-hmm. The Leafs got their franchise player the following year, Eichel in Buffalo in 2015, Matthews in 2016. I would have to think that part of his frustration is the fact that Toronto turned it around so quickly, and Buffalo has fumbled it.
The only thing, again, but part of that as well is the leadership group, specifically the coach, is a huge factor here with Babcock. You look at Dan Biles, remember they're Dan Biles, man, he won a cup with Pittsburgh. He was pretty much I'll give the man credit for winning a Stanley Cup, obviously, Bilesman. But in terms of him being he had a lot of parts that he had in play there. And
that's because of Shiro, right? Shiro's a really good
put that together. We're seeing evidence, obviously, of how good the Shiro could put together in Jersey.
But what let Buffalo down was Murray. Murray was not a good GM. He may have been a good scout where he was, able to scout some talent. But the trades, he gave up way too much in trades.
Yeah,
but I would say also coaching as well is huge.
It is. It is.
I think that Evander Kane, Zach Bogosian. I keep calling him Eric Bogosian. I've been watching talk radio too much. But that Evander Kane, Zach Bogosian deal was disastrous for this team. Not because they gave up Tyler Myers, but because they gave up young guys. They gave up draft picks. They gave up Armia, who's an effective.
Armia's really good.
Brendan Lemieux might be an NHLer. I mean, they gave up depth guys, but they took on $10 million in salary that they really didn't have to do. Anyway, let's go back to the World Junior. Just touch on a couple of the other games. Finland, Denmark. I thought one of the most dastardly things that occurred yesterday was the fact that the Denmark goaltender, I think his name was Krog, faced 62 shots from Finland.
He shook his head at the end of the game. Like I felt bad for that kid.
Well, no, this is the thing that made me sick. The in-game presentation at KeyBank Center, Luukkonen, however you probably pronounce the Finnish goaltender, is a Sabres draft pick.
Right.
The Danish goalie faces 62 shots. Who gets the save of the game but Luukkonen?
Yeah.
And the player of the game for Denmark was the guy who scored the goal, not the guy who made 58 saves. It was a joke.
Now I got to add, well, look, I even thought when they gave on television Brady Tkachuk player of the game in the U.S. game, Samuel Buchek was the player of the game. It wasn't.
Well, no, they have one for each.
Well, but they only announced Brady Tkachuk on the NHL Network.
They probably
There's no reason why the goaltender, why Krog shouldn't have been named for the Denmark. That was nuts.
And what are they giving away, Mike? Last year it was shavers, it was razors. What are they getting this year?
I think
you haven't noticed.
I didn't notice. I think there was
Anchor bar sauce. Anchor bar sauce.
Yes, and the actually I think they got it right. The winner for the player of the game for Slovakia was the goalie, was Derny, and he deserved it. He played fantastic.
I think it was Buchek. I'm telling you, Derny was good. Buchek won that game for him.
Well, I mean, the other I can't remember his name, but another forward.
Yeah, the other guy had 2 goals too, but Buchek also had both assists. Really, kind of set that guy up.
Now, one thing about that
was it? It's something like that.
Yeah, I can't remember. One thing about that Finland game was Tolvanen, the national draft pick, had 11 shots on goal and played phenomenal. Yeah. Now, there was an article in the Adam Vinian in the Tennessean saying that more than likely after the KHL season is over with, depending on how far his team, I think he's with Jokerit, right? How far his team goes, that Tolvanen will be signed, or probably will be signed by the Predators. And, you know, there's been precedent before where they get signed and they get put right in the lineup. I mean, he would be a matchup problem, Russ, if they put him on the 3rd or 4th line.
Yeah, he'd be an upgrade to like Harry Z. I think Laviolette would be happy to have him. Now, look, he doesn't play a complete game. He'll never play a complete game in his life, but Laviolette knows how to deal with those guys. And Tolvanen, you put him on the ice, and he is a shot machine, and he will score goals. Like, he just will. It's just, again, I think last year teams got lost in the fact that he didn't get into college, but he didn't get into college because his transfer credits were a problem. Right. I went to community college. I knew when I was transferring from Nassau Community to the University of Houston, I had to go to certain schools that would accept all or most of my credits. But when you're coming from Finland, you don't know until the last minute. Anthony's a teacher. He could speak to this better. That was the reason he ended up not going to college and playing in the KHL. And honestly, I think that hurt him in the draft.
Yeah, my credits at Buffalo State wouldn't have transferred to Yale,
right?
Unfortunately, okay. We'll skip Russia, Switzerland. Other than the Russians won. It was ironic. They put Russia and Switzerland at the small venue with 1,500 seats, and it actually was well attended. But if it was playing in KeyBank Center, it would have looked like it was basically empty.
Now that game's on my DVR. I didn't even get to see it yesterday.
Yes, Sweden and the Czech Republic was a pretty interesting game. Not as one-sided as people would have thought, but you know the Czechs are actually, I think, pretty decent. They have some NHL level talent that's on that team.
Filip Zadina is certainly going to be top 10 in the draft,
and he was the one who scored the goal for the Czechs. And Nekish was unbelievable again. But
he's one of the best players in the tournament.
But I'm really, I mean, what an understatement, or what a obvious thing to say. But I'm really impressed with Sweden, not only because of Dahlin, but because of the depth on that team. Their power play is incredible. With Pettersson, with Elias Anderson, with Dahlin, and Alice.
Pettersson and Dahlin seem to have like a chemistry that's really hard to get in a short tournament, and the way they pass the puck to each other, it's just like once it goes from one to the other, you basically either have to look at the net or on the other side for a scoring chance, because both of those guys can kill you. So yeah, you don't want to put them on the power play. That's the secret to beating Sweden. Yeah,
and Anthony, for Leaf fans, there was some excitement watching that game, because Liljegren has been sold to them as a purely offensive guy, as a great skater. Well, he showed some open ice hitting ability in that game. He nailed Nekish in the second period with a clean check along the boards, and then he walloped a Czech defenseman right near the Czech bench in the third. It's in my blog on Hockey Buzz. it's a perfect hit shoulder to chest, and he nailed him. That dimension to his game was not sold when we were talking about him at the draft last June, and if that's part of his game going forward, that's going to make him even more of a gem of a prospect.
In some ways, he kind of reminds me a little bit of Shane Gostisbehere in the fact that they sometimes sneak up on you with regards to their fit. Despite in terms of Shane's size, obviously now NHL size, but originally when he came in, he has the potential to bomb guys. Now, are they ever going to be Norris Trophy defensive level? No, not necessarily, but it's good to know that you could at least do that. Now, again, part of that will be as he gets to the pro level. Timing of those things. He might be able to bomb a guy at this level. At the pro level, he's going to have to probably be even more careful in terms of picking his spot. So, right. No, Liljegren, I love it. I think he's going to be I think he's got potential to be a really outstanding player for the Leafs. It's just I go through this Swedish lineup, and it's just fantastic, especially forward core wise.
Yeah.
First two lines are just fantastic. When you got Pettersson and not Nylander on that second line.
Although Nylander's been up and down. He had a nice goal.
I'm just saying in terms of pure talent level, he's been up and down. But I like Nylander in general. But I like Elias Anderson and Jesper Boquist as well. I thought Boquist was one of the better draft.
Boquist was one of the better picks in that draft for the
better picks in the draft. And again, Red Shiro again. Ray Shiro. Ray just. I think he got a really good one. I mean, overall. This Swedish team, I think there's a chance that this is a potential medalist team.
They'll medal. I think they will medal. What I was going to say about Liljegren, Mike, is this is the first time he's healthy. And remember, last year, what did he play for? Like 3 different teams? When you do that as a young when you do that as a young player, that does mess with your head. I think we're seeing his game fully settled in now, and I think some of these things weren't revealed beforehand. But again, there's always this rhetoric. Like people will say the same thing about Quinn Hughes. Like, hey, he's a mostly offensive defenseman. He had the best defensive play in the U.S. game yesterday too, where we shut down one of the Slovak guys on the wing coming in. So that does happen. It's just the way it is.
And I asked Liljegren on Tuesday after the game against Belarus. I mean, whether playing for one team, playing for the Marlies, has helped in terms of just stability. And he said, it's been great. He's acclimating himself to North America, but when he goes back to play for Sweden, they play a completely different style than the North American style, and there's a bit of an adjustment. And I think in the first game, he was good, but I think there was a little bit of that adjustment for the first half. And then this game, he was stepping in, and a couple times that they used him and Dahlin together, that was a phenomenal pairing. Yeah. I just have to say this about Dahlin. To me, I mean, obviously, it's an understatement to say that he's phenomenal talent, and he's more.
Nobody's ever said that, Mike.
Yeah, more than likely, he's going to be the number 1 pick in the draft. But you see, I mean, I hate the comparatives, and stop with the Hedman stuff. Stop with the Lidstrom stuff. I mean, that's
he can't be Hedman because he's not as big.
Yeah,
he can't be Lidstrom because nobody will ever be Nick Lidstrom. I agree with you.
But as a 6'4", 200+ pound defenseman, he's got the skill level and the moves of a 5'10" defenseman. I think he's as skilled as Brandstrom, who's on his defensive pairing, and that's saying a lot because Brandstrom's pretty damn skilled.
Yeah, no, he is, and he's faster than Brandstrom, and he is a generational guy. Like he is that special. He's got a great shot. There will be a time when he'll be challenged, but it's not now. The funny thing, the other thing too, I brought up on the other podcast is the way to always find a younger player in these games is it's because they're wearing the cage, and I don't understand what the thinking is behind that. Do they have are their jaws not as developed when they're a couple of years younger? Do they think it's going to prevent them from a head injury? I don't understand why the younger players wear the cage. I just don't get it.
Yeah, I don't know, but I noticed that. I mean, it's sort of like the Dominic Hasek cage, the Artur Zerbe type of thing.
Well, Russ, this is something you got to go and ask.
Yeah, I bow.
Yeah, you're curious now. You got to get up to Buffalo. And you're gonna have to start.
If I ask Renee Fossell about that, he'll start talking about ticket sales.
Okay, let's shift to the NHL, and we have to start with the announcement of 3 pretty key injuries that from yesterday. the Chris Kreider thing in the game against Washington, where he left the ice in the first period, it spurted a bunch of rumors online. It was, I mean, everybody was talking about it, and then it comes out after the game that Alain Vigneault said he had an upper body injury, and then the following day it comes out with a spontaneous blood clot in his right arm. And now he is out indefinitely. Now, I know people who've had blood clots, Russ. That means a severe course of blood thinners over weeks and weeks.
And bed rest, right? And you can't really move around.
No, you can't. I remember this with Dmitry Yushkevich years ago when he had a blood clot in his leg. It was particularly scary. You have to be,
because it could go to your heart.
You also take a look to see if it's going to happen. And exactly, because it could detach and end up in the brain. That's it. You're done.
Heart, and that's it.
That's it. There's no, and you have to be the fact that they found it as quickly as they did is good. They may not have been sure about it when they set upper body. I guess maybe they sent him for testing and everything. And
now Dupuis played with blood thinners eventually, right? Pascal.
Yeah, but that was one of the reasons he retired early, because they were having such a sort of detrimental effect.
And you have to see, and the key thing is that now you have to be really on alert, because if you start to see repeats of it, that means you're going to have to stop playing. It's because now this is something you're going to be on for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Certainly talked this over with. I remember this happening, and I remember talking about this with my wife, who's a physician.
Yep.
And she said, yeah, pretty much. Who's
the former Nashville goalie that had it too?
Yeah. I remember.
Czech goalie. He was good. He had a retirement.
Vokoun.
Thomas Vokoun.
Yeah. Same thing. Yeah, Vokoun had the same issue. Yeah.
It happened late in his career, though, but yeah.
It's once you see a repetition of it. If it happens once, it's one thing. But even then.
But it could happen because of trauma, right? He may have gotten it because of trauma.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they won't know. I mean, the clot will have to dissolve. He'll go on a course of blood thinners for weeks. Right. Then
and then after that, Mike, it's constant monitoring.
Yes,
it is constant monitoring to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Yeah. No,
it does. That's usually second time.
Yeah. Then you're in big trouble. The second injury that they're describing it as week to week, and this comes on top of Calvin DeHaan being out for, I believe, the season, wasn't it, Russ?
He's out for the year.
Yeah. Now Johnny Boychuk is now on IR with a lower body injury. Now that to me that gives rise to the speculation that Eck mentioned last week about. And not necessarily Goodbranson, because I still think Goodbranson's a better fit with other teams. But now with Boychuk contributes offensively, DeHaan does as well. I think the Islanders, if Detroit's ready to sell and a guy like Mike Green is out there, I think they may step up either for him or somebody like him. They called up the other Sebastian Aho,
right,
Bridgeport, but I don't think that's a long-term solution. I think that
he's pretty good, and then they have Pulak. They'll get by. Goodbranson could help them out because I think, unfortunately, Boychuk's career now more resembles Goodbranson than it does the former Boychuk, who had a little bit of offensive push. Yeah. So I think they'd be fine with either. But we knew they were going to have to get one anyhow because of their goaltending. This is just a big problem now for the Islanders, because with all the offensive, with all the goals they're scoring, which is almost the best in the conference, they've given up the most. And so I don't know how they're coming out of this.
And I don't know how much interest the Islanders had in Robin Lehner, but the missive that he let go after the game, basically,
that's going to be Garth's not going to like that.
Yeah, I mean,
it's not going to be liked by. It's at the end of the day, it's not going to be liked by a lot of National Hockey League teams. So Lehner has to be a little bit careful with that.
Yeah,
because float something out like that. Some may look at it and say he's just speaking out of frustration. He's said some kind of wacky stuff in the past as well. But I mean, goalies are goalies. I know they're their own breed. But you throw that kind of aspersion out, people start. I think he's got to be careful with that.
Yeah, I do agree. And look, we saw the replay. Now he doesn't get to see the replay, right? He's just going with the heat of battle. But yeah, he's got to know that he's playing for his next contract, and he's going to probably get traded.
Yeah.
It was a bad look for him.
I think a comment like that and the lack of composure that he showed is going to scare off. I mean, there may be teams out there that are so desperate for goaltending, like the Islanders, I think. that they'll still take a chance on him. But
he boosted Arundel's value. That's what he did.
There you go. There you go. And the third major injury was Mark Scheifele, who left the game against Edmonton. I don't know if it was a collision, but I know it was an upper body injury, and it came out that he's out 6 to 8 weeks. Now, Winnipeg's in the top 3 in the Central. They have depth offensively, but we're talking about one of probably their 2 best forwards. It's either him and Wheeler, or him and Line A, if you want to ascend Line A that high right now. But I mean, this is a big loss for the Jets.
Huge. I mean, he's one of the best centers in hockey, so it's huge. But right now, Hellebuck's playing so well that I think they can get by. Like, this is the first time we've seen the Winnipeg Jets get great goaltending while having an almost elite offense at this point. Their offense will take a hit, but I got to tell you, now this is a big deal because now I think Hellebuck could carry him.
Yeah, I mean, he hadn't shown that ability in the past. I'm still a little questionable about the strength of Winnipeg's defense. They've been able to cover up. Mm-hmm. I mean, the Kulikov addition has helped them. Myers coming back has helped them. Trouba's having a solid year. I don't know whether Bufflin is back or not, but I know he had an injury before the break. But I'm not 100% sure of the strength of their defense. The only time I've seen them this year was over.
I think they've got a solid 4. I think get to third pair, that's where the concern's going to lie, and that's I think if Winnipeg makes a move potentially, it's going to be in that area for something in terms of depth for that third pair.
I agree. I think that's where they're shooting at. There is a 4th injury now, Mike. It's not as major, but it could. We don't know. I mean, Matt Murray's now got an LBI again.
Oh, boy. Yeah.
And this is a problem. Like, he is now getting into Bobrovsky territory where he's in, he's out. It's probably groin. We don't know. But if it's not groin, it's knee. And
Well, it sounds. I mean, I saw that Casey DeSmith got recalled from Wilkes-Barre. So I mean, assuming now, right now, it's Jari and DeSmith, and Michael Layton is probably holding down the fort in the AHL. Yeah. And that's fine. He can do that if you're depending on Michael Layton to win games.
Yeah, he made 60-something saves in a game once, so I'm not worried about Layton.
Yeah,
but I think he made 68 saves or something. That was crazy. But I just worry about Matt Murray now because he seems to have the injury bug. And when goalies get the injury bug, that's a problem. And especially a problem if you're trying to repeat as a champion.
Yeah, I have a feeling Jim Rutherford is going to be on the phone to his old assistant, Jason Bottrell, asking him what Chad Johnson would cost, because Linus Ullmark is playing very well down with Rochester in the AHL. Yeah. I think they want to give him the opportunity to play a lot of games, and Chad Johnson can step in as a 1B on occasion. He did it with Calgary. He did it in Buffalo in the past. I think they need somebody who can take a little bit of the burden off of Matt Murray when he does come back. And, he's been hurt every year.
Yeah, so, and this is multiple times this year.
Yeah. Touching on a few of the games in the NHL last night, the Bruins, where is that? Sorry about that.
Yeah, that was a game. That was an interesting game. What was it, 4-3 Washington? Yeah. That was a game where the Bruins let their foot off the gas pedal. Washington made a great comeback. I was watching part of that game. But I got to tell you, this is a game where Washington owns the Bruins right now, and Ovechkin seems to do great against the Bruins. He can't do anything against the Rangers. And it's just weird how you get these disparities and these matchup problems, because everything Ovechkin couldn't do in the Ranger game, he did against the Bruins. Yeah. He got the shootout goal he didn't get the night before. He looked great in that game. It's crazy. But Washington's starting to feel it a little bit, and that is a problem for teams in the East. Holtby did let up a horrible goal, though. I mean,
was it a flutterer? The back goal?
Considering the fact that Holtby pretty much dominant, up until that, he's pretty dominant against Boston.
Yeah.
So to see that kind of goal, there was interesting to certainly see that. But in terms of overall, again, they still maintain their Vulcan mind meld on them, I guess, so if you want to put it that way.
Tampa Bay beats the Canadians 3-1, and again, this is sort of symptomatic of what the Canadians are right now. You got Carey Price and pretty much not much else.
It was Drouin's return to Tampa too, which again we all believed that Tampa won the trade the minute they made the trade, but I mean, the Canadians were desperate, and they got what they got, and Price was pretty good in that game. It wasn't Price's fault.
Yeah, no. That's the problem. They
can't score.
Right. They can't win every game 1-0.
Right.
That's the problem. And this is the thing. I think the Sergachev for Drouin deal is a pretty good deal for both sides. They're both getting talented players. But the mistake in this deal was to trade for Drouin and to move him and make him your number one center. How much more pressure are you going to put on the guy? Put him on the wing. He's a top six winger. He can score 30 to 35 goals if you just leave him alone and put him in that role. But you're going to put more pressure on him. He's undersized for being a number one center. I think he's ill-suited to be one. He's creative enough offensively, but it's just dumb. It was that kind of pressure to put on him is just dumb.
I agree. I wasn't a fan, but I said they had to try it because that's all they had. But, yeah, they've got to be looking for a solution for that. But it's not going to happen this year for them.
No. And Anthony Sergachev is – I mean, I think he's up there for Rookie of the Year. I mean, I
love Sergachev. That's one of the best parts of it. When I saw the trade go down, I was like, DBY, man. I mean, he knew it. He got himself – it's possible to have another franchise-level defense when you already have – when you already have Victor Hedman, it's, I've loved Sergachev for quite some time. It was one of the things that kind of bugged me a little bit about the deal because, again, I feel like Montreal has a difficult time getting themselves out of their own end to begin with, and they've moved away a lot of the defensemen who have a bit of an offensive bend to their game.
Yeah.
Trade a guy like him.
Load.
Yeah, and that's what's going to happen.
I'm just going to mute you, Russ, because you're on the phone. Okay, so well, let's talk about this game because I didn't see any of it because I was at the World Junior game, but I'm sure you watch a little bit of it, Anthony. The Panthers and the Flyers. Panthers win 3-2. Surprisingly, James Reimer for the Panthers ever since Luongo, and Reimer did this in Toronto. There were stretches where he could play really, really well, and then it would make Leaf fans pull out their hair that then he would have 4 or 5 games where he couldn't stop a beach ball. I mean, the key to a guy who's a number one goaltender is more than anything consistency, and he never had it. But right now Reimer is playing pretty well.
Reimer played a good game. Sorry.
Yeah, he is playing. He played a good game, but I would also say to you, Philadelphia was extremely sluggish in this game coming out of the gate. They really. I don't think they – even with the shots, I believe total numbers, there was one – I think in the second period when they gave up 2 goals, they outshot Florida. It's just I felt there was a lot of perimeter play from Philadelphia in this case where they weren't really getting as much traffic in front. They didn't start getting enough traffic in front until later in the game, basically until the third period. The first goal that Jared McCann scored on Brian Elliott, I mean, I just finished off writing a piece on Elliott for Center Ice Philly magazine. It's a goal that, honestly, I mean, I know there was a little bit of a screen on the play, but it was not one of Brian Elliott's better moments. I mean, he got caught with that shot, and it banked in on him pretty badly.
He's playing too much, though, right? Hextall is now
playing a load. That's my other point is the fact that the load he's playing – now, he's played well. I mean, listen, he was goalies in the NHL in December.
But Neuwirth –
second star 2 weeks in a row. Yeah. But it's a load that is not necessarily what he normally is used to having. And again, with Neuwirth being out, let's face it, Neuwirth's been up and, only 8 games in this year, not particularly good at all. So he's had to shoulder the load, Elliott, and he's going to have those moments where he's going to be giving up. So, and now we got Tampa tonight. Haven't gotten word yet on who's starting. I'm assuming it's still going to be Elliott. They're going to want him to probably get right back in net again.
I don't know. I would put Neuwirth in. I got to give Elliott a break.
Against Tampa, you're going to, again, that's a case where, that may have been a case where they kind of had a little bit of bad taste in their mouth, and they'll go with that. Plus, they're off for a couple days after this.
Come on, back.
A breather. I don't, honestly, I don't see Neuwirth getting back in net because of the games coming up. These are teams. They got Pittsburgh coming up. They've got the Islanders next week, and they've got St. Louis coming up next Saturday, and then they have a back-to-back again with Buffalo. You might see Neuwirth in one of those games,
Yeah.
but there's enough spacing in between where they feel like they can give him a breather, at least 1 or 2 days off here. And they're still trying to climb back in the standings. And if they feel like Elliott's the guy who's going to give them the best chance to win,
I'll give you 2 hallmarks of the Hackstall system, 2 failings. One is the goaltending. He definitely rides one of them too heavy all the time. There's never a good balance when you have 2 guys. He tends to fall back on that.
That's the thing. He does. With Neuwirth being out as long as he was, and I don't know. Again, he doesn't.
But I would have thought one of these 2 games would have been a break for Elliott at some point.
Yeah.
Or put in Lyon at some point and won it, but not these 2 games. I figured my guess was originally before lineups were announced they were going to put Neuwirth in for this one, and then play Elliott against Tampa.
Yeah.
Right, that's what I thought too.
But I guess they figure with enough of a stretch being off, they go with Elliott here. They had enough of a rest, and then I guess we'll find out tonight. We'll find out shortly whether or not who's going to be in net. But
obviously, Dave Hackstall has gone to the Lindy Ruff school of goaltending rotation because this is like when he had Ryan Miller and he'd play him for 27 straight games and only pull him.
It's not to that degree, but it's close.
It's getting
down in the standings. They're trying to climb back in at the same time, and if they don't, I know we have to space these things out, but I think there's a little bit more of a comfort zone when you actually are in playoff position than not 11th in the conference and trying to make up for a 10-game winless streak that you had earlier in the season.
Okay, now the second part of the hallmark of the Dave Hackstall system, the failing, is with that number 1 power play, how many shorthanded goals and shorthanded goal attempts are they going to give up? Because they give up a lot.
Well, I mean, right now, their power play is not – their special teams are not good at all right now.
No.
They ranked 18th.
But the shorthanded part is what bugs me because it's like and
there's a lack of confidence there. There's a definite – they're still shifting things around – lineup-wise, trying to figure things out, and I feel like there's like a lack of there's not a very good communication set there. And then when we get to the penalty killing, that's really been one of the biggest Achilles heels all year. 29th overall in the league. You're not going to be a playoff team if your penalty kill's that bad.
Just quickly touching on a couple other games, we've run out of superlatives to talk about the Golden Knights. Russ can show you his hoodie. They win 3-2 in overtime over the LA Kings on a David Perron goal. So now they've extended their lead in the Western Conference, which is just baffling.
I will say this: Marchessault is really the real deal. I thought he was a guy that was a product of a lot of ice time and taking advantage of that. But you know what? He has really turned the corner, and I liked him as a young player, and then I sort of got not ice cold, but lukewarm on him. And I got to tell you, he's going to get a long-term contract.
He's scoring at a point per game pace, which is
he needs a long-term contract. He does.
Now, an old soldier had a wonderful night last night in Vancouver, and I'm sure GM Jim Benning is the most happy that this happened. Thomas Vanek scores 2 goals and 3 assists against the Blackhawks in a 5-2 Vancouver victory. Russ, I mean, I think it's pretty certain now that with Vancouver, with the injuries that they've had, and now they've started to fall back.
Was Anton Forsberg in that, Mike?
I don't know.
I believe he was.
I would assume so because
might explain a bit. Let's see.
Yeah, that helps a little.
Well, I'm looking up the stats.
Let's see. Hold on.
Either him or JF Berube. So it's Here we go. And your goaltenders were Anton Forsberg.
Remember, he was the steal of that trade, Mike. I want to point that out.
Yes, he was the steal. But okay.
While Panarin keeps scoring, by the way.
We know that Vancouver, based on their slippage in the standings, based on the injuries that they've occurred, they're probably going to be sellers at the deadline. And Vanek, like he was last year in Detroit, was brought in on a 1-year deal. And when Detroit traded him, I think they got a 2nd-round pick. They got something fairly decent. I know that right now Pittsburgh, amongst a number of teams, are looking for depth at forward, and maybe Vanek is too slow for Pittsburgh. But I think some team out there is going to probably give up a 2nd-round pick for Thomas Vanek.
It's really weird because Vanek does fit in with a lot of teams' regular season, and then when it comes to crunch time, and I should say the easy part of the regular season, like when it came to crunch time, who was it with Florida? His last trading. He looked horrible. He never fit in.
And I have an explanation for that. He's
Okay.
a top 6 forward. He's got to play in front of the net on the power play. He's an offensive guy. They put him as a third line guy. He can't.
Sure.
He doesn't have enough speed to check, and he needs creative guys to play with. And if he doesn't,
that would be like putting Nolan Patrick with Dale Weiss. You're right. Yeah.
Right. So I mean,
nobody would ever do that.
Yeah, no, not at all. We'll skip over Sharks, Flames. Sharks win 3-2. In a shootout. Joe Pavelski with the winner. The Leafs play in Arizona last night, and as typical of the Leafs, they score 7 goals, but there's still something negative there because they go up 3-0, score 3 goals in a span of like 2.5 minutes in the first period, and almost give away all three goals in about a minute and a half. I mean, Arizona's got a lot of talent offensively, but it was like Josh Archibald and I can't remember who scored the second goal, and it was completely defensive breakdowns on the part of the Leafs. Now they outscored.
But are any Leafs leads ever safe this year?
Well, when
not really.
And Freddie Anderson gave up 4 goals yesterday, but he played well. It was just mostly just defensive breakdowns. And again, they for a month and a half, and when they were in Philadelphia, you saw this. They were trying to play that conservative road style, keep everything to the outside, get to overtime type of thing, which I don't think this team can do. This is how they have to win. And this is not how you win in the playoffs. So, again, that's why I'm a little skeptical unless they go out before the deadline and add some players in terms of defensemen, whether they can – I think they can get by the first round and beat whoever they play in the first round. But good luck trying to get by Tampa.
It depends, Mike. There's so many teams that are sort of limping this year that there's going to be some tough 8th seed teams this year. I don't know. I don't know who the Leafs – will actually match up against, but this year's matchups are going to be weird. Like there's going to be some matchups where you say, ooh, they'd have been better off being matched up against this team rather than that team.
Well, if Tampa's the top in the Eastern Conference and they face a Rangers or an Islanders or Pittsburgh, I mean, then there might be a way that if Toronto is in second or third place in the Atlantic, they can get out of the Atlantic. But I mean, that would take, I don't perceive Tampa as being a team who's going to, I think they can overcome those teams. They're that talented and that.
Well, Tampa does have a thing over the Rangers. They would beat the Rangers. Unless the Rangers make some amazing move at the deadline, I'm pretty sure they'll beat the Rangers. So if that were the matchup, they'd get past that. But it would be tough. It would be a long series.
Now, go ahead, Anthony.
I was going to say it would be a 6-gamer. To make that series if I had to pick it.
Now, a couple things, and just briefly. Nazem Kadri gets elbowed by Lawson Krause. He's out for the rest of the game. It was early in the first period. After the game, Mike Babcock says, I thought he was coming back, and I think he's going to play tomorrow, which is basically the same thing he said when Austin Matthews bumped with Morgan Riley, and Austin Matthews was out for 2.5 weeks. He did say, I don't know. I have to confer with the medical staff. But it's always – I think he's going to be back right away. Just I think sort of to get away from the press and the questions, and then
he does that. And he look. There's a tactic that some coaches take in this league, and they do it in the NFL. And Bill Belichick is the master of it, and that is he never talks to the trainer. He doesn't want to know anything, so he could tell you he doesn't know anything. Like that's their insulation from that.
And the other interesting little note is Curtis McElhinney all of a sudden came down with a wink, wink, lower body injury. And tonight, Calvin Pickard has been called up from the Toronto Marlies, where he has played very well, goals against around 2.2, real winning record, save percentage in the 920s or 930s. And he gets the start against his former team, the Colorado Avalanche.
Yeah, I hope McElhinney's only renting. That's my hope for him.
When they made that trade, and McElhinney he had a 41 save shutout against Edmonton. He's had a couple good games, but he's also had a couple games where I thought he was Curtis McElhinney. So when they
he could find a roommate in Jonas Enroth. I mean, Babcock's creating roommates now.
Enroth is in the KHL, Russ. Okay.
McElhinney could end up there too next year.
So, any plans for New Year's Eve?
Well, I won't be in Buffalo. Excuse me, so that's good. That's a plus because New Year's Eve in Buffalo is never good.
Wait a second. Well, you got to remember, we got to put this in context. Russ and I celebrated New Year's Eve at a Buffalo Wild Wings in, I think it was Etobicoke, Ontario, watching the U.S. and Canada.
Yeah.
Plenty of appetizers and wings, and then
Indigestion.
so it'd obviously be better than that. But
I'll be on Long Island. I'll be with my oldest friend, and so that'll be good. We'll have a good time, I'm sure.
Anthony?
For me, my wife and I are going to go out to. We're going to go away from the city, not towards Philadelphia, but further out. We're going out to a Korean restaurant in Newtown.
Nice.
And then afterwards, supposed to go to Triumph Brewery up in New Hope and ring in the New Year there. So they're doing like a thing there. So I have to confirm whether or not they need reservations or not. But I don't think you do. And then New Year's Day, we, as you know, my wife being Russian, the Russians treat New Year's the way that that Americans treat Christmas. So we'll be at my wife's aunt's house. And
that's an all-day eat-a-thon, right?
It's again on the next several days between the family holiday get together, which happens tomorrow.
Right.
My family, the Italians. Then you got New Year's Eve, with what Nina and I are doing, and then New Year's Day is the Russian eat-a-thon. Yeah. I'm probably going to be up to about 194, 195 pounds by the end.
Cholesterol rising.
I'll need to just,
stock and Alka-Seltzer is rising daily as
I'm gonna have to be on the treadmill for a good week solid to cut some of this out, eating soup.
Yes,
but that's pretty much how my New Year's is going to go. I'm looking forward to it, though.
Mine will be the most exciting because I'll be at the KeyBank Center covering the 8 p.m. game at the World Junior, and then if I, by some miracle, get out of there before 12, I'll probably end up at some bar.
Where will you do? Will you go by the Jim Kelly statue, Mike, to ring in the New Year? What will you do?
There is a Jim Kelly statue?
No, there's not. That was a joke.
No, I was like, what are you talking about?
There probably should be one for Jim Kelly, the writer, more than the quarterback.
Yes, I agree with that.
Mike will park in front of the bar, but it'll be wide left.
I walked by the statue of Tim Horton last night as I was walking to my car, and somebody had put a donut on the stick. On that note, for Anthony Mangione,
wait. Actually, one last thing. Sorry. In the chat room, there was a question that was asked about the Devils, what I thought they would do at the deadline. I think they need a winger. If they were to get like a second line or a third line winger that could kick in some goals for them, they could be really dangerous heading into the playoffs because they're going to be a playoff team. So that's my thought about the Devils.
The addition of Vatanen has helped their defense. They're still scoring, and Schneider is playing great. So, yeah, I mean, Vegas
and Heischer has brought it to another level now, like I thought he would when he's comfortable.
Yes, he has, and we'll be talking about the Devils and many other teams in the new year as we get closer to the February 26th trade deadline.
Yep.
Thanks for watching for the entire year of 2017. We will be back on Wednesday, I believe, for the next HockeyBuzzcast.
Who knows? Whenever we're back, I don't know.
We'll announce it. For Anthony Mangione, for Russ Cohen,
I'll be in Buffalo at that time. So
thanks for watching, and I'm going to cut him off. And remember, without the bus, it's just hockey.
Anchor bar.